lawyers of detained Anglophone leaders, Ayuk, Tabe, and 9 others who were picked up in neighboring Federal Republic of Nigeria and brought back to Cameroon in a controversial extradition move, continue fighting for their freedom. And the 5th of January 2026 marked the 8th anniversary of the controversial extradition move that was initiated by the government of the Republic of Cameroon in collaboration with the government of the Federal Republic of Nigeria and the leaders of the Anglophones, the leaders of the Anglophone community, so to speak, in Cameroon, Ayuk, Tabe from Ghana, for Tassam, Wilfred, from Bang Henry, Kimeng, Cornelius, and Jikimbi Kwanga, Fidelis Jen, Che, Augustine, Awasum, Egbe, Ogok, Iyambe, Elias Ebai, and Shufai, Blaise, Sivit, Bernier are still in detention in the Kondengi maximum security prison in the nation's capital. The year only on the 8th anniversary of the narrow tense controversial extradition to Cameroon, the legal team of Sisiku, Ayuk, Tabe, and called once more for their liberation, compensation, return to Nigeria, reintegration into the normal life trade, and standing on the United Nations Human Rights Council's working group on arbitrary detention statement. The team is telling the world how Cameroon and Nigeria conspired in wrongdoing against Sisiko, Ayuk, Tabe, and the other detainees, and they want the intervention of the international community to compel Cameroon and Nigeria to do the right thing, to respect the treaties they have signed, or better still, the international conventions they have signed, guaranteeing the rights of citizens of the Republic of Cameroon, and of course their country, and laws that they have signed guaranteeing the rights of persons who are in situations of refugee and should not be sent back to the country where they are escaping from, because this is what Nigeria did with Cameroon when they brought back the narrative to Cameroon. And recently the Supreme Court of Cameroon heard the matter and adjourned it to February or January 15, 2026. And the lawyers are saying that all these judicial procedures, even the one that led to their condemnation, are all illegal, arbitrary. Their detention is illegal. They shouldn't be detained. This is what the lawyers say. They should be free. And tonight we are receiving the lead counsel, the Barrister Joseph, who is joining us today. Barrister, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, Mr. Babila.
Barrister FRU Joseph, you are championing this matter. You are at the head of this case, fighting for the freedom of the narrative. How has it been all this while?
Well, let me start off, Mr. Babila, by thanking you and your audience and your wonderful medium for always doing the best to get the information out to your audience. It's a wonderful job and you're doing it wonderfully. And on behalf of the Amazonian prisoners of conscience and in Era 10 particularly, I want to thank you for that. That said, you've asked 10 years, how has it been? We, as our lawyers defending these people, couldn't be luckier. We couldn't be more fortunate, because it takes a unique set of circumstances to have this kind of valiant people, 10 professionals who have the best facts in the world, the best law on their side, and the best sources of adjudication that have adjudicated their cases and ruled in their favor. And when you're a lawyer, when you're lawyers working for people with facts like this, with law on their side, you count yourself very fortunate and very lucky.
8 years down, and you've been on the front line fighting for the freedom, both at the national level and at the international level. You've been to Nigeria several times over this issue. Tell us more about.
So we started off with Nigeria, where this 10 professionals, these 10 men, these 10 leaders were abducted from. And I insist on using the word abducted because in your intro you talked about, controversial extradition and controversial deportation. I really want to clarify this and say that these were abductions, these were kidnappings in Nigeria. Because in law, when you talk about an arrest, you're talking about a formal procedure where there is judicial or administrative overview, where there is an arrest warrant. Okay, in this case, in the Naira 10 case, there was none of that. Okay, and then when you talk about a deportation or an extradition goes or comes after a formal judicial hearing. All right, where in the case of an extradition, there's an extradition treaty between two nations, and then after a judicial review, there is an extradition. None of that happened in this case. By the way, there's no extradition treaty between Nigeria and Cameroon. So to call it an extradition is abnormal, it is a misnomer, it is not the right thing to say. It's neither a deportation either, because a deportation will never happen in international law in a case where people are certified refugees and certified asylum seekers, certified by the Nigerian Immigration Service and certified by the United Nations High Commission for Refugees. These 10 men were certified refugee and asylum seekers, and under no circumstances, I repeat, would they have been deported to Cameroon. So the technical word is refoulement. Refoulement means the ability of one country, of one government that is charged with the responsibility of protecting the rights of individuals who have fled from persecution back to the country where they fled persecution. And in this case, that's exactly what happened with the Naira 10. They were refugees, they had ceded their Cameroonian nationality, they had now offered they have sought protection from Nigeria. Nigeria had accepted that role in international law by conferring refugee status on them, and they violated those obligations and refouled them to Cameroon, sent them to Cameroon, where they had escaped persecution because of their nationality, because of their political opinions, and because of their membership in particular social groups.
So what is Nigeria saying so far about this?
Well, Nigeria has spoken very loudly through their judicial branch. You remember that the first 3 cases that were adjudicated at the federal high courts in Abuja, 3 distinct cases and different high court judges ruled in favor of the Naira 10. They ruled that their abductions and their kidnappings were illegal, they were unconstitutional, they were unconscionable, and that they should be released immediately, be returned to Nigeria, and be compensated. So Nigeria, in as much as their judicial branch is concerned, has spoken very clearly that these people are not secessionists, they are not terrorists, they were expressing a political opinion, and that they have a right to that nationality that they are claiming because of self-determination. That is a sacrosanct principle of international law. And so, has Nigeria spoken? Yes, through their judiciary. In fact, the last hearings that we had them in the National Assembly. And the National Assembly, as the legislative branch, is working on that. And they had a sine die adjournment because the case surfaced again in the Supreme Court. And because of the principle of separation of powers, the case that was pending or a case that is pending in the Supreme Court cannot be adjudicated by the legislature. So the legislature suspended that sine die pending the resolution of that case in the Supreme Court. So Nigeria has spoken through its judiciary, but the legislature is still to. And I hope, Mr. Babila, is that the judiciary or the legislature can cause the judiciary to liaise with the executive to be able, because the executive is the executor of foreign policy. And once these people are in the custody of Cameroon, that becomes an international matter, and that has to be solved or resolved at the level of these bilateral relations. And we are hoping, we as lawyers, we are hoping that Nigeria will do the needful, they will do the rightful thing by liaising, by having their executive liaise with authorities of Cameroon and get these people released.
What can Nigeria do at this point to correct that action of allowing people who are fleeing from violence, who are fleeing from persecution, to be taken back to the country where they are fleeing from in violation of international law? What can Nigeria do to correct this issue?
Nigeria needs to take this as a matter of national policy and strategic national interest, because these, as per international law, these are their citizens. These are Nigerian citizens because by applying for refugee status, they automatically ceded their Cameroonian citizenship and assumed Nigerian nationality to be able to benefit from the protection of Nigeria. So these are Nigerian citizens by law, Nigerian nationals by law, by international law, and as such, they have a sacrosanct obligation to be able to protect these people just like their own citizens, because it becomes a matter of strategic national interest that their citizens, that they had obligations, natural obligations and obligations by international law to protect, and they did not protect. So what do they have to do? They have to deploy all their agencies necessary to be able to liaise with each other, to be able to coordinate and communicate with the Cameroonian government to be able to release those people. So it is a sacrosanct duty, and they have to, in terms or under international law, to do it.
Right. Let's come back home to talk about what's been happening at the Supreme Court as far as this matter is concerned. But before we do that, we will go to the newsstands, and we're taking a look at what the newspapers reported this week. This is the press. Daily Voice reports that it's been 9 years in chains for the 10 Anglophone leaders, Ayuk, Tabe, and 9 others in what the paper qualifies as the controversial case of the Abuja 10. The Horizon talks about the abduction of Ayuk, Tabe, and 9 other Anglophone leaders from neighboring Federal Republic of Nigeria. In another article, the paper says Cameroon's payroll cleanup, 20,000 civil servants face pay suspension from January, with the Ministry of Secondary Education topping the chart in the initiative qualified as Clean Hands, led by the Minister of Finance, Louis-Paul Moutaze, with 5,000 absentees. Interim Minister of Mines, Industry and Technological Development, Professor Fu Callistus Gentry, explains the gap between declared exported gold quantities. The Guardian Post tells its readers that at the New Year Wishes ceremony at the Unity Palace in Yaoundé, President Paul Biya insisted on the multilateralism panacea for global challenges. According to municipal updates, President Paul Biya credited global solidarity and hailed friendly nations for Cameroon's diplomatic gains. Right, you're welcome back. We're still with our guest, Barrister FRU Joseph, lead counsel of the detained Anglophone, the Ayuk, Tabe, and the 9 others. Barrister, what's been happening at the Supreme Court of Cameroon?
At the Supreme Court of Cameroon, we filed, you will remember that these people were convicted and condemned and sentenced to life imprisonment on the 19th of August 2019. Within 10 days, we filed our grounds of appeal to the appeal court of Mfuni. Within a very short period of time, the case was caught up, and at the second appearance, the panel of justice, after 15 minutes, confirmed the judgment of the military tribunal. And then in 2021, specifically on the 27th of August 2021, we filed 10 solid grounds of appeal, appealing both the procedural and substantive laws that were engaged in the trial and conviction of these 10 valiant leaders. from the 27th of August, the acknowledged receipt of those grounds of appeal on the 30th of August 2021. Then it was white noise, dead silence. We never heard anything again. And suddenly, in December of 2025, we got word that the case had been docketed and that there was a hearing coming up on the 18th of December. We appeared in court as usual. We are always ready, willing, and able to be able to prosecute this case. We appeared in court, and to our greatest dismay, the president of the panel who presided over the same case at the appeals court was the Advocate General who was sitting in place of the legal department at the Supreme Court. And truth to be told, he was honest enough to be caught. He had the candor to the court to reveal to the court that there was an inherent a dangerous conflict of interest that he could not pursue. So he recused himself, and because of that recusal, there was an automatic adjournment to the 15th of January 2026, which we are impatiently looking forward to be able to continue prosecuting this case.
I wouldn't ask you to go into some details of this one, because I know that you wouldn't do that because you're not allowed to go into the details of the matter that's pending before the court. But from a legal standpoint, why are why is killing the pension? If you say that this matter is illegal, I don't want to use the word condition or whatever, the fact that they were picked up from neighboring Nigeria and brought here and tried, all that procedure does not respect the law, does not respect their rights. Why are they still in detention?
Okay, Mr. Babila, thank you for really giving me the opportunity to really take some time and elucidate and expatiate on this, okay? Number one, you don't have to hear from Barrister FRU. You don't have to hear from Batonier Akeremuna. You don't have to hear from Batonier Etabison. You don't have to hear from Barrister Young and the other bench of or college of lawyers defending this case or prosecuting this case. You don't have to hear from us. You have to just read 3 judicial decisions or judgments that have come from 3 different federal high courts in the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Okay? That is in Nigeria. Let us come back to Cameroon. The Constitution of Cameroon is very clear as to the position of international law. In its Article 45, it is very clear that any law that is ratified by Cameroon is immediately adopted by that same constitution as primal law, and that law supersedes any national law. Okay, so fast forward. Cameroon has ratified the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Cameroon has ratified and is a signatory of the 1951 Convention on the law on refugees and its attendant protocol in 1967. Cameroon has ratified the International Covenant on Peoples and Civil Rights. Cameroon is a signatory of the AU and a member of the African Charter on Human and People's Rights. Cameroon is a ratifier of the Convention Against Torture. Okay, these are all facts that are verifiable and that are there for everybody to see. Against the background of these laws that they have ratified, against the background of this law that their constitution, which is the supreme law of the land, has said that these laws supersede national laws. Under the canopy of the United Nations Human Rights Council Working Group on Arbitrary Arrest and Detentions, Opinion 059/2022 has clearly, Mr. Babila, laid it out to you, to Cameroonians, and to the world that these people are not secessionists, they are not terrorists,
and that their rights were violated, and that they had no business being revolved from Nigeria, and above all, that their arrest or their kidnaps and their detentions were arbitrary and illegal, and that they should be immediately released, compensated, and returned to Nigeria. You don't have to listen to us. You don't have to listen to the lawyers. This is the Supreme Court of Human Rights sitting in Geneva with 5 different sets of judges, jurists, and the best international law minds saying this. It is not us saying it. So, So, can I answer the question personally?
Go ahead.
Yes. You know what? These people are being persecuted and prosecuted because of their political opinions, because of their claimed nationality, which is a verifiable fact in law and in fact. All right? And because of their membership in social groups. And these are protected rights under international law. You go and read the Convention on the Protection of Refugees. In it's Article 3, Article 33. It is very clear who a refugee is and why they should be protected. And these people have claimed their right to Amazonian nationality. And I know that is very easy to say, but Amazonia is an imaginary state. It is not a member of the United Nations. Pursuant to the principle of self-determination.
I was coming there because
yes.
the response that would come immediately as far as this issue of identity, nationality, or whatever is concerned, is that there is no Amazonian state as of now. There is no Amazonian state. Now, if you're referring to the principle of self-determination, correct, how do you link that with a state that does not exist?
In fact, on the face of it, I agree with you that it does not exist because it is not registered pursuant to Article 102 of the Charter of the United Nations. But back up in history and in law, back up to the UN Trust Territory of Southern Cameroons, which is a matter of law and fact, which existed, okay, up till 1961. And 1961 is cardinal because after the plebiscite, Mr. Babida, after the plebiscite of 11th of February 1961, Southern Cameroons had voted over 80% to join La République du Cameroon. Spoilers alert. Do you know that on the 21st of April 1961, that same year, on the floor of the General Assembly of the United Nations, the vote was to determine whether Southern Cameroons should accede to independence. Do you know that La République du Cameroon voted against, I repeat, against the independence of Southern Cameroons? As a lawyer, and as an analyst, as a journalist, you and I, let us analyze this. If La République du Cameroon had good intentions about having Southern Cameroons just join them in a union where they could go about progressing like brothers they claimed, why did they vote against the independence of Southern Cameroons? To a lawyer and to somebody with an analytical mind, my lawyer mind tells me there is just one reason, and that one reason was the intent to annex Southern Cameroons, an intent that they went right ahead and executed on the 30th of September and annexed Southern Cameroons and have been in Southern Cameroons to this date. Yes, do they have a right to rename Southern Cameroons Amazonia? Yes, they have. Do they have a right to call it Southern Cameroons? Yes, they have. And
but as of now, we have Northwest and Southwest regions.
Correct. So you can call it.
Which is former British Southern Cameroon.
The former UN Trust territory of Southern Cameroon.
As of what we have in the administrative books of the Republic of Cameroon now.
Correct.
But then, coming back to the fact that these 10 leaders are in detention.
Yes.
And for several years, they have been there. Are there any possible avenues that you can think of to resolve this matter?
Yes. Yes.
Without necessarily going the way of maybe the independence of former British Southern Cameroons, without necessarily going the way of having an Amazonian state. Is there any possible avenue to resolve this matter? First of all, to have their freedom.
Number one, let me start with the latter part of your question. Their freedom is paramount. Their freedom is what every lawyer on the team, every right-thinking and reasonable lawyer in defense of valiant leaders and people like this should be in search of. We want their freedom. We wanted it yesterday, we want it now, and we will want it when we go to court on the 15th of January. That is non-negotiable, and we don't have to dwell on that.
In fact, I'm talking about, for example, people have been calling for general amnesty.
And I'm going to...
All the detainees, including the leaders, should be set free.
And that's a political opinion that is above my pay grade. But I can say this. As a citizen, I can say this. The power of amnesty belongs to the president of the country. And amnesty comes with mercy. Amnesty comes with some sort of forgiveness. As a lawyer, that is the purview of the president. As a lawyer, I am concerned with the law and the practice, therefore, and the execution, therefore. I am concerned with judgments. There's already a judgment from the Supreme Court of the Human Rights. That judgment needs to be executed. And besides, you pardon somebody who has done wrong. There have been judgments and upon judgments that have said these people did not do anything wrong by exercising their political opinions, by claiming nationality to Amazonia, and by belonging to membership in particular social groups, advocating for their right to self-determination. That is not a crime. You can never persecute people upon these grounds, and you should never sentence people to life imprisonment because of these political opinions.
So what should happen?
What should happen is a political decision, which again is above my pay grade, but I can venture that in the same way that both Nigeria and Cameroon faltered at international law, that violated their obligations in international law, they need to get together as mature African nations, mature members of the Committee of Nations, and sort this out and get these people free today, the next minute, and tomorrow. And in fact, Mr. Babila, this is not difficult. This is not this is not phantasmagoric science. This is a practicality that deals with human rights and humane decisions that have to be taken by people in the corridors of power to be able to execute this. It's not difficult for these two nations for the nation of Cameroon to sit together and say, listen, we faltered, we screwed up here. We were not supposed to have picked up these people in the first place. And we are going to atone for that. We are going to start making up for that by, number one, releasing them immediately, releasing all the Amazonian prisoners of conscience, and releasing all those who have been politically arrested, and then finding a way to fulfill all the other conditions of Opinion 059/2022. So it is it's political will. It is and they have the means and the ability to execute that will. And it is our hope that they will execute that will and do the needful and release these people.
And the court is expected to do its job.
Precisely.
The Supreme Court precisely in this matter, the matter that should be coming up
15th of January. Yes. And our hope is, every lawyer's wish, every lawyer's prayer, every lawyer's incantation, every lawyer's libation is that the Supreme Court should follow the law, pursuant to the facts, and deliver the right judgment. And we are confident, we are absolutely rock sure that our 10 grounds of appeal that were not controverted, that were not answered to, which in itself at law is a concession, is an admission that these grounds stand, should be adhered to, should be listened to, should be sustained, and thus people be freed immediately, instantly. And that would be the beginning of justice for those people who have been wronged and who have suffered trauma and psychological torture all this while.
You're also talking about compensation, that they should be compensated 8 years in detention.
Precisely. And that these are rulings from courts in Nigeria and the Working Group on Arbitrary Arrests and Detentions, again opinion 059/2022. So it is not you and I saying it. It is these international justices, it is this international judges, it is these international jurists, it is the United Nations Human Rights Council, the Working Group on Arbitrary Arrests and Detentions, that is saying it. It's not just us sitting at the table of Equinoxe and saying it.
You want to tell us what's happening with the other detainees, because there are many other detainees of the Agri-Food Price, Macho Legacy, and the others who are also in detention, but we're going to take an intervention of the week right now, and we'll come back in a minute.
The school has passed through thin and fat. The school has been vandalized. You see, the crisis came and targeted schools like Cameroon Baptist Academy, where the students were booming. The academics was booming. The results were so wonderful. Each year we are proud to have results about 80-90% to 100% the GCE. Then suddenly the crisis came and the school had to close down. In fact, the importance of this, the alumni and what the ex-students alma mater, and what we are trying to do is to revamp this alma mater so much so that we can put the pieces together and in collaboration, in partnership with Cameroon Baptist Convention, see how we can forge ahead to realize a vibrant academic institution that will serve the purpose for now, for today, the contemporaries.
I started the academy started with virtually every other thing. We had all the subjects for science and arts, you had agriculture, you had poultry farming, you had tailoring, you had secretaryship. In fact, you will see that most of the ex-academy of the yesteryears of what people was there, some sold the addresses up to today. We are trying to say people are professionalizing. He started professionalizing education right from secondary school. We would have not been talking at this stage about going to agri school left and right. We're doing everything on the spot. And for some other reasons, the school was closed, but we later on took up. Academy has been moving to bounds, close, open, close, open. We thank God that so far the college has been working very strong. Each time they close and reopen, like when the 64 class closed, it reopened, the last class will open, this go there now, you cannot see the...
In academy, we did everything unknowingly. So the approach that our reverend, gave to us unknowingly was holistic, as I keep repeating. Because in education, we talk of 3 facets, 3 domains. We have the cognitive, the affective, and the psychomotor. So in the cognitive domain, we become lawyers, doctors, engineers, and what have you. In the affective domain, in academy, we used to have a very tough choir, where we sing, that is the affective domain. And the psychomotor domain talks about the sports. Academy was top to nothing. So Academy had a very powerful football and handball team, and everything was found in CBA at that time.
An elective AGM of excellence of CBA is an occasion which we are hoping to galvanize all the excellence all over the country, those in America, in the diaspora, Tiko, Kumba, Limbe, Muyoka, Boya, Douala, to come together on that day to put a structure, a new structure, a new executive should be put in place to channel the affairs of excellence of Cameroon Baptist Academy.
The matter that took place in Sterling Court, Virginia on January 9 at 8 a.m. in the courtroom of one of the U.S. court judges. It was pitting me versus the Department of Homeland Security. And basically, the Department of Homeland Security had been carrying out its research on me without me knowing. And when my lawyer requested that the government prosecutors must give all information about me in the records, and under the legal system, they had to give us about 198 pages of documents. And in these documents, 198 pages, these are documents that basically concern all my life history, educational and professional history, to my residence, to my obtention of residence in the United States. And amongst these documents, there was an incriminating letter, a letter written by Akwanga Ebenezer Derrick Mongo Jr., calling for the revocation of the asylum status or the permanent residence of Cameroonians, not only myself in person. He typically mentioned the name of Miss Achu Doris, that she was accorded asylum on fraudulent grounds. It was also mentioned that of Eric Titamo Takwi, who was the chairman of the SCNC at the time here. And then he mentioned my name. By the time I was the Secretary General of the SCNC. And then he said that my own asylum was on fraudulent grounds because I was a member of the CPDM and President Bia's youth in 1993 to 96. And in essence, he's accusing me with crimes against humanity, and that I participated with the President Biya regime in harming students in the University of Boya, and that CPGM and Presby are armed militias that kidnap people, assassinate people, and that I was a facilitator, and that I don't merit to live in the United States. I need to be deported. And he did not only call for my deportation, he called for the deportation of many Southern Cameroonians. And then he went ahead to solicit a job with the Department of Homeland Security, whereby he will act as a private investigator and also to be screening the cases of Southern Cameroonians in the U.S. He says that documents are fabricated in the streets of Kumba Fiango, Bamenda, some in the United States and some in Europe, and that the U.S. government should consider everybody's case to be re-examined and that they should be placed on deportation. So calling me to court was just one in 1,000 of cases that has been ongoing silently without these people maybe not having the money to really get a good lawyer to request this evidence from the Department of Homeland Security. That's basically what we're talking of FBI here, Federal Bureau of Investigation. So I had been under scrutiny and examination unknowingly until I received a court summons. And so on the 9th of January, 2026, at exactly 8:30 a.m. to 9 a.m., the courtroom opened where I presented myself with my Jewish attorney, Driscoll, and I also presented myself to the judge. And the judge, the government prosecutor on the government side of the United States, DHS, Department of Homeland Security, was represented by a Hispanic lady who was the chief prosecutor for the state. and then came along with two other co-workers. So the case opened. I had to put my submission, which basically was that the CPDM and Presby are all grandfathers to the SCNC, because it was as a result of the disgruntlement of some Anglophones who were both in the CPDM and other political parties that first of all moved and went and joined the Cameroon Anglophone movement. And some students joined Counsel, Cameroon Students Association, in the late 90s, early 90s.
Give us the final court decision.
The final court decision in it is that they had all ample proofs that, yes, I was vice president of the youth wing of the CPDM in Monaco, and truly I was a sympathizer with Presby as any other Cameroonian in a one-party system that was just transgressing into multi-party. Some of us acted within the, or voluntarily or involuntarily, we were members of the CPDM. Yes, I was a member of the CPDM, but the fact now is, did I conceal it to the United States government? I didn't conceal it because it was not necessary to disclose things that were irrelevant to my 32 years. I can't be talking about my 32 years and I go back to 21 years and 22 years. I was talking about 32 years when I arrived in the United States. I was 34 years. 34 years. So the court said, because of that, generally, they will entitle me to a waiver. A waiver means that although they have found you that you partook in these activities of the CPDM and stuff, but you did not hurt anybody. You didn't kill anybody. And there's no evidence that I hurt anybody, because I was studying political science and history. And political science and history meant that I had to participate in politics both theoretically and practically, which means my belonging to the CPDM and Presby was part of my learning process, learning internship to be a future politician. So on basis of that, the court will grant me a waiver. A waiver means, although they find some of the things that Agwanga has said true, but it doesn't meet the standard for me to be deported back to Cameroon, which means I will live on a waiver, meaning that I will retain my residence, but I will not progress to like anything like citizenship or whatsoever, because I keep my residence but don't become a citizen, of which, frankly speaking, I've always insisted I'm a Cameroonian. I was born a Cameroonian and I will die a Cameroonian.
Welcome back. Barrister FRU Joseph, apart from the narrow 10, apart from the 10 leaders, there are many other persons who were arrested in connection to the Anglophone crisis who are still in detention today. Mancho, BBC and the others. What's happening with the other detainees?
It's a sad story to be recounted at leisure, but the Amazonian prisoners of conscience who insist of being called this way range anywhere from 3,000 to 4,000, you know, and this number, it's necessary to clarify that the range, this range is this wide because, Cameroon is not very specific with your data. They cannot at any given moment or publicize the number of these prisoners of conscience, okay? But from our own records, from what we have from Bamenda, Boya, Bafoussam, Douala, Yaoundé, Kondengi Principal and Central, Umfu, Fumban, Betwa, and all these other places where people arrested in connection of the Amazonian crisis are all scattered, range anywhere from 3,000 to 4,000. Yes, it is sad that they are being prosecuted and persecuted for the same reasons that the Naira 10 are being persecuted or on, which is their membership in political, their membership in particular social groups, their political opinions, and their claim to Amazonian nationality. And like we have said over and over in this conversation, that these are protected grounds in international law. These are not secessionist demands. These are not terrorist demands. And it is not just us saying it. The law has said it. International law has said it. International organizations have said it. And by the way, that's why every other international stakeholder has insisted that there should be an open-ended, free, genuine dialogue, sitting down with both parties in a neutral ground to be able to go to the root causes of this conflict, war, or crisis, to be able to get to a fair resolution of this matter. So it is our hope.
So are you saying that the charges leveled against them, terrorism, all of that, are not on what? If we are taking the United Nations Human Rights Council Working Group on arbitrary arrest and detentions as anything to go by, which is, in this case, is the only litmus test to go by, we are saying that, yes, these charges are unfounded, these charges are frivolous, these charges are only persecutory in nature. These prosecutions are unjust, they are a travesty to justice, and they must be rescinded. That's what we are saying, and saying it clearly and loudly, because these are protected grounds, and the opinion 059/2022 is not the only opinion that has been issued by the Human Rights Council Working Group on Arbitrary Detentions. There are at least 4 other opinions that have been issued to people like T. Conrad and others that I can't remember their names by route, that are there waiting to be executed. And if the United Nations Human Rights Council, the working group, if they are consistently and persistently ruling out these applications and saying that these men or these victims have been arbitrarily arrested and illegally held, then there is smoke. Then the fire is not good fire. That fire is only saying one thing, that they are being wrongly prosecuted, they are being wrongly persecuted, and that they should be released because these are unfounded grounds, they are unfounded charges, and these charges must fail, they must collapse, and they must be released. Barrister, let's end this conversation with this. This week we saw videos going viral in which a voice attributed to an officer of the Defense and Security Forces of the Republic of Cameroon is heard celebrating the killing of 9 armed civilians in the Donga Mountain Division, and celebrating the killing of the pro-independence fighters, so to speak. But when we look at what's been happening over the years, close to 10 years now, tracking and killing the pro-independence fighters and whoever, and the problem is still persisting.
Well, Mr. Babila, it's sad, and
is there any solution in tracking and killing people?
In fact, this question is 3-pronged. So let me start out with the first prong by saying that it's always sad, it's lamentable, it's despicable when a human being has to celebrate the death of another human being, especially if that human being is supposed to be a professional, trained by a country, being paid by the taxpayers of a country, under a single unitary command, under a single military command, that command which is identifiable, that command which is seen, and that command that has a face. This is unconscionable. The second prong is that killings, either way, are unacceptable and should never be condoned, and they are intolerable. Whether they come from the pro-independence fighters or from the government side, killings is not where we should be. And because of that, that is why we are asking, through the loud voices of the international stakeholders represented by the United Nations, by the United States, by the Vatican, by civil society voices that have said the only viable solution to this is for both parties to sit in a neutral position and engage in an open-ended, without preconditions, dialogue to get to the root causes. And when this happens, I am sure, every reasonable human being is sure, the international community is sure that there will be a resolution to this and the killings will stop. And then the third prong of your question is, have these killings solved any problem? Of course, Mr. Babila, no, they have not solved. In fact, the situation is degenerating on a daily basis. People are dying on both sides. And of course, are we going to kill everybody before we come to a census and then get to the table? Because killings will not solve the problem. You have to remember that a people who have an inborn, innate sense of a fight for an ideology cannot be extinguished. That cannot be killed. You can kill the physical body, but you cannot kill that ideology. And the root cause of this problem is an ideology that cannot be killed. And you and I know that the international community for 9 years now knows what the root causes of these problems are, because we know that the conditions that was precedent to creating that union in 1961 by resolution 1608 were never met. Those three conditions: one, that the United Nations, France, the UK, and then La République du Cameroon and Southern Cameroon sit together, create a constitution, get a union treaty, and then register it under Article 102 of the United Nations. These three conditions have never been met. So the union was null and void ab initio. It was never consummated. There was never a union. What obtains is an annexation. And this is the root causes of this. And we need to get to this and resolve it. And once we get to this, people will stop, soldiers will stop celebrating the death of human beings, deaths or human beings whom they are supposed to be protecting.
The independence fighters also.
And the independence fighters, you're right. Nobody, like I started off saying, nobody, morally, legally, and otherwise, should be celebrating the death of another human being. But even in the case of war, rules of engagement under international law do not, listen to me, do not condone the desecration of graves or the celebration of death.
Barrister, thank you so much for the insights you've shared with us today.
Thank you so very much. Again, I want to thank you tremendously for always taking the time to shed light on this and to educate your audience, because I think this is what we need to do to be able to push this forward and get resolution to this. On behalf of the epochs and behalf of the NERA 10 especially, I want to thank you and to thank...
Thanks, ladies and gentlemen, for staying with us. That's it for today. I'm Abuja. Goodbye.